Hi, my name is Apoorv Tandon. I'm a student at the Computer Science Department at IIT Kanpur. I'm from Bangalore, Karnataka, and I've studied in Bangalore. Um, my JEE advanced rank was 136, and my JEE main rank was 71. And I am making this video to share my joint entrance exam experience and journey on behalf of the Sathi platform, which allows students across India to attempt JEE through self-study and provides them resources to study. So right now I'm studying computer science at Indian Institute of Technology, Kanpur. In my joint entrance exam advanced, I achieved a rank of 136, and in JEE mains, I had a rank of 71. So firstly, I'd like to start this video by sharing how I made my day schedule. So I'd like to emphasize that during preparation for JEE, it's extremely important to have a fixed biological clock. Like you should try to have as many tasks in a day being done subconsciously without having to think too much about them. So for that, it's very important to like schedule your physical exercise and your study at fixed times throughout the day. Especially what times you eat and what you eat should be sort of fixed throughout your 2 3 years of preparation. So it's extremely important to have physical exercise because I personally felt that unless I had really exhausted my physical energy, I wasn't able to use my mental capacity to its fullest. So in on every day, I'd meditate in the morning and I'd go for a jog in the evening around 6 p.m. Also, an extremely important thing about timetables is that many students try to, make very strict timings and very strict syllabus that they have to complete within this time span. So I think that only causes stress, and there is no, a shortage of stress in a student's life. So personally, I had tried the same thing. I had sort of, I used to plan that I would do so and so chapters, so and so topic on this day. But you'll realize over time it's never possible to follow your timetable as accurately as you think you can. So what I started doing was, instead of writing down the topics that I would complete in a week, I tried to maximize the time I would spend on a topic, and just be content with how much ever I could finish with the time I spent. But I did make sure that I spent as much time as possible with as much productivity as I was capable of to finish that topic. And then in the end, I was content because I knew I couldn't have done anything more. So yeah, that's one advice I would give, that instead of making timetables according to the chapters or topics you have to complete, make your timetables such that you know how much time you have to spend and what productivity you have to give in that time period. So yeah, and it's extremely important to meditate, calm your nerves every day, because JEE is a journey that sort of is an emotional roller coaster, and you have to reset your emotions and your mental state to neutral every day and then start your preparation. So I'd like to talk a little bit about the methodology of really covering topics, the how-tos and the nitty-gritties of how you complete a certain chapter in physics, chemistry, and math. So personally, I used to attend, lectures, classes in the morning from school. And once I would come back from the classes, during the class, I would make notes and, write down whatever I felt was important. And as soon as I would come back home, I would read those notes. After reading those notes, I just a glance through the notes, because you've just written them. If you read them again, then it's very likely that they're going to stay in your long-term memory for quite some time. After reading the notes, I used to read NCERT and find the smallest details I could in NCERT about that chapter, because as you know, JEE main sort of tests your noticing ability, your ability to find small details and retain them for the exam after 2 years. So underline whatever small facts you feel that can be tested in the NCERT, and if you can, write them down in your notes, add them to your notes. So in my case, I used to have, for example, 3 pages of notes from the class. It would increase to like 6 to 7 pages after I'd read NCRT. Like, there is an unbelievable amount of content in NCRT that most people fail to notice, and that is why only those people who can notice those details are able to succeed finally in JEE Main. After reading NCRT, use the following week, the week after that chapter or that topic has been taught, to solve questions. Like, don't focus too much on theory in your study time. Instead, focus on what questions have been asked in previous years, what questions you can find in the NCRT back exercise and NCRT exemplar, and just search for questions online. Like, challenge yourself to find that question which you can't solve. If you can solve every question that you found, then it really hasn't helped your preparation. You've succeeded in your practice once you found that question that really tests your mental ability. Initially, you aren't able to solve it. You spend like 5 minutes on it, you still aren't able to solve it. And then at one point when you understand the solution, it sort of blows your mind. And that feeling confirms that your practice session has succeeded. Once you're able to get the feeling that I couldn't solve this, but now I can. So yeah, that would be the methodology of covering certain topics or chapters. Another important aspect of JEE preparation, I felt, was the mindset towards JEE, because as I said, JEE is sort of a roller coaster, emotional roller coaster, and JEE is nothing less than a sport. You're spending 2 years preparing for JEE, and you're giving it all you got in the final 6 hours or the final 3 hours of the exam. So in my preparation, I used to like compare JEE to a sport, and I was an athlete. And in my 2 years, I would spend as much time as I could in the day, uh, you know, giving, giving it all I've got, giving my practice all I've got, all my focus, you know, uh, and the motivation that is required in those practice sessions. So since you are an athlete, you should try to maximize your productivity. Know that there will be failures along the way. Learn to handle those failures. One essential quote that kept me through this journey was, that in any sport, in any game, you either win or you learn. You never lose. So every time your scores are down, or you feel some challenge along the way, just remember that that is a learning. If not a win, that's a learning. Remember to maintain a journal of your scores if possible, and notice what made your scores dip at certain points in the 2 years. Because the 2 years are a no stakes, practice. Don't take anything too personally in those 2 years. Every dip in your scores is just an opportunity to learn where you lack, because someone who's just scoring high throughout the 2 years really hasn't learned anything about their caliber and what mistakes they're making. So try to analyze after every exam. When you get your results back, try to analyze what mistakes you made in terms of the mindset you had throughout the question towards the questions, or where your content was lacking, or if you made calculation errors. And among these three, calculation errors and lack of content should be written down by hand. Like, write the whole question down and write the solution. The purpose for this is, like, every time you give an exam during your practice, you sort of you have that in your subconscious that if I get any of these questions wrong, I will have to write the whole question down and its solution. So that sort of motivates you to focus more on what calculation errors you're making, what mistakes you're doing, what silly mistakes you're making. And slowly you'll realize that your scores are improving because you're cutting down on those errors where you know the answer, but because of a lack of concentration you've lost marks. So yeah, making error notes is extremely important. Also, because you're an athlete and JEE is a sport, you have to love the game, right? You can't you can't be an athlete unless you love the game. You can't spend all the time in your day, reading books, learning content, unless you really love the subjects. So teach yourself to love physics, chemistry, and maths. Sort of, even if you don't initially, you will learn to if you spend more time with the books. Don't look at it as your work, your job. like you have to do this. Look at it as your hobby. Like this is what you're meant to do, and everything else that you do is work. Like for example, if you have to sort of go for a social gathering, or if you have to do anything else in life, that is a break away from JE preparation. Like that should sort of be the mindset towards JE, that JE is your sport and you love the sport. So also, it's important, because you love the sport, you're going to surround your environment with, things related to the sport. So my room used to be filled with like charts and diagrams. Especially in chemistry, there are a number of things you have to remember. So flow charts and you just post-its around your study table or wherever you study. Um, you can try to sort of surround yourself and remind yourself what you're really doing by these diagrams and charts. Also, it's a really common question, what percentage of preparation is self-study and what percentage of, preparation is from an external source. So personally, I felt that nothing less than 80-90% of the preparation comes from your own self-study. Like finally, you're giving the exam yourself. You're sitting through those 6 hours yourself. No one's guiding you through those. And you're solving questions yourself. You're learning the content yourself. You're asking questions yourself, doubts yourself. You're analyzing your errors yourself. So throughout this journey, the mental patterns that go through your mind are what you're going to apply in the final exam. So finally, 80 to 90% of the effort is your own self-study. Like it doesn't matter where you were taught, by whom you were taught, what books you used. Finally, what matters is what effort you put in, and how much concentration you put into whatever you were learning. And the remaining 10% is the resources you have. And honestly, there is no lack of resources in today's global village, the internet connected world. And talking specifically about the resources that most people fail to recognize, the government and NCRT provide a number of resources online. And talking about a few of those, of course, the NCRT textbooks, you cannot forgo those, because NEET and JEE main especially focus on small details in NCRT. So NCRT is of course a compulsory resource, and it should be the primary resource before you go any further. In addition to the NCRT textbooks, you would have noticed that NCRT exemplars are also published, and those have like really good questions. Sort of not direct questions as an NCRT, but a little extension to the topic. So yeah, make sure to use the NCRT exemplar. Also on YouTube, IIT PAL publishes lectures by professors from IIT on JEE topics. And finally, the different IITs only prepare your joint entrance exam advanced paper. So, the minds who are thinking of the questions, who are making the paper, are teaching you. So it can't get any better than that. And that's definitely a resource I used as well, the IIT PAL lectures on YouTube. NTA, the National Testing Agency, has this application for practice papers and previous year papers. And they have, I think, hundreds of papers, and most people aren't able to finish those on both JEE Main and NEET and JEE Advanced patterns. So yeah, make sure to attempt those papers just for practice. They also give your error analysis and the time you spent on each question, and the solutions for whatever question you got wrong. So it's a solid platform. So I would definitely recommend using that resource as well. Now, close to the exam, like 3 months before the exam, I think the strategy should be to leave whatever theory you've learned, especially in chemistry, to what it is at that state. You would have this urge, like giving practice papers, to learn more and more things in chemistry, go for more reference textbooks, um, like learn more things. But you sort of have to fight that urge, because in the last 3 months, whatever you learn in, especially in chemistry or for example biology for NEET, you aren't going to retain during the exam practically. So in the last 3 months, the strategy should be to spend as much time as you can giving papers. For example, 2 papers a day, that's 3 plus 3 hours, 6 hours, and analyzing their errors. And yeah, that's all you should do in the last 3 months. Coming to the last day before the exam and the week before the exam, I would recommend eating light, because finally you are an athlete. You have to keep your mind fresh. Eat light, eat less carbs, eat more protein, and yeah, focus on what your goal is. Don't focus too much on what you don't know. Focus on what you know. There's this complex that comes on the last day before JE, that you start focusing, you start realizing things you don't know, and you start panicking. So be aware of that complex. Keep in mind that in the 2 years you have definitely learned more than you have not learned. Like even though on the last day you may feel like there is more that you have not learned, just console yourself and remind yourself that you spent 2 to 3 years on JE preparation. It's not practical that you've suddenly found more than half the things that you haven't learned. So yeah, sort of keep that in mind, remain calm. The last day before the exam, don't even think about studying. Pack up all your textbooks, keep them inside your cupboard. um, you know just clear your room of everything, and just do whatever you like doing on the last day. Play a sport, go out with family, friends. um, yeah, but don't risk falling ill or spending too much energy. Just relax on the last day. And during the exam or during any practice paper, extremely important psychology is to leave the questions that you don't know. Because, like, even though during your practice you would go for only the questions that you don't know, because those are the ones that are going to increase your knowledge, during the actual exam you have to recognize the question. Like, one of the main skills that JEE mains especially is testing, and JEE advanced, other not the questions that anyone can learn the content. It is the ability to handle the fact that you don't know something, immediately recognize the questions and the topics that you don't know, and have the ability to leave them, skip the questions, because that's one of the hardest things that a contestant for JEE has to do: skip a question. It's sort of a dent in your armor. You feel like you were lacking in that topic, that's why you couldn't attempt the question, and someone else would attempt the question and get more marks. That's not true. If you recognize that you don't know the question, skip it immediately. You've saved that time for another question that you might know. So, keep that in mind. One of the most important skills in JEE is to skip questions, the ability to recognize what questions to skip. One additional thing I wanted to talk about was, my study sessions. So, in a day, I had school in the morning where I used to attend classes, and once I was done with school, then I would start my study sessions. So, sessions would be in 3 hour sets. So, because the final exam was 3 hours, I sort of wanted to get myself in the habit of sitting down silently for 3 hours, without any distractions during my 2 year preparation. So sitting at a stretch for 3 hours without moving too much from your chair, like sitting for 3 hours without talking, absolutely don't use your voice. Try not to let anyone disturb you, like come into your room or wherever you're studying, and just focus on what you're doing for 3 hours. Then take a 15-20 minute break. One of the most important aspects of this 3 hour 15-20, 3 hours 15-20 is that once you're done with your 3 hour study session, you actually feel like you deserve the 15-20 minute break. If you don't have this pattern 3 hours of 3 hour study sessions, then you would notice you tend to start taking breaks every 30 minutes, every 1 hour, and then you sort of even feel some guilt that you didn't actually do anything for the 1 hour, and you're just taking a break for 50% of the time you spent studying. So yeah, 3 hours 15-20 minute breaks, and do that for as many sets as you can. On most days I was able to do 2 sets. That would be 6 hours a day. But you try to do 3 sets if possible. Yeah, and a very important aspect again I've noticed is people ask, how many hours in the day uh, should we spend to study? Now, according to the mindset that I've told you, JEE is a game and you love the game. So you would try to spend as much time as possible, for JEE. Thinking about it rationally, different people cover different amount of topics and have different amount of productivity in the time that they spend. So telling someone that 10 hours or 6 hours, 5 hours is enough in a day, it doesn't make sense, because we don't know what the person is doing in those 5 hours. So more important than that is how much concentration and how much effort, how much love you're giving for the subjects in those, in the time that you're spending for it. The 3 hours or even 1 hour that you have, make sure that that is the only thing that is on your mind. You're not thinking about anything else. And even if it's that 1 hour of complete concentration in a day, then I can say that even 1 hour a day is enough. But of course, try to spend as much time as possible with the maximum concentration that you can. Yeah, so that was, the method of studying that I followed. Extremely important during the study sessions is to keep a bottle of water next to you. Don't eat too much, don't stress eat, but keep drinking water. Hydrate yourself, keep yourself hydrated, keep your mind fresh. Yeah, so anytime you sort of feel hungry, just drink water and eat only like the main meals that you have in your day, with less carb, more protein. And yeah, keep your mind light. Another aspect of JE preparation is all the distractions that you have, for example, social media, your mobile phone. So personally, that wasn't much of an issue for me. I did have a mobile phone, but I had not made, accounts on social media. So try to disable accounts on social media, or if not, completely forgo social media. Try to at least have like timers, digital well-being tools on your phone that prevent you from using social media for too much time. Because as you know, the sole purpose of social media, the purpose of hiring so many people in social media companies, is to make the user, sort of addicted to the platform. You keep using it, trap them in their, series of recommendation. So keep that in mind, that that is what social media is made for, to trap people. And yeah, so be conscious of that. Don't get trapped. Don't spend more than 15 or 20 minutes, looking at social media. Yeah, because that can be a huge waste of time and also sort of distort your concentration in the day. Try to spend as much time off screen, use physical textbooks if possible. Yeah. And another aspect that I can't emphasize enough on is collaboration. So I would say try to restrict your friend circle in these 2 years or 3 years to a group of maybe 2 to 3 friends who share a common interest. What I mean is, who are also preparing for competitive exams and are studying the same things as you. Because in any individual effort, it is priceless to have some collaboration, to talk with others. As long as you don't know what people around you are doing, you can be misguided. Finally, JEE is a competitive exam. Your rank will also depend on how everyone else did that day. So make sure that you collaborate with people, you keep in touch with people, and see, know what they're doing, know what people around you are doing. In my case, I had one very close friend who lived near my house, and every week we would like sort of meet and discuss what topics we found interesting, what questions like blew our mind, where we found those questions, what the solution was. And we sort of comment, feed. We would never have thought of that solution. We would talk about, because we went to class together, we would talk about like how the teacher taught, what the teacher taught. And not only does it help like lighten your mood, and the conversation sort of fuels your concentration, the conversation fuels your concentration for the coming week. It also tells you what the competition is doing, how they are approaching the same topic, your approach to a particular topic, how you are learning that topic could be very different from how someone else is learning that topic. And maybe you learn something from them, something you missed during your while reading NCRT. You might have missed something, and you'd realize what you missed if you talk to other people. Another important point of view in terms of collaboration is, like, once you are confident with a certain topic, try to solve your friends' doubts, convince them, make a group, study group, where people send each other doubts, post up doubts, whatever questions they couldn't solve, or the the topics they are unsure of, convince them to sort of put it up on a platform and try to solve their questions. Because I've noticed, like, I had a group where I would solve people's doubts when I was confident with the topic. And you notice that when you know where your competition is going wrong, then that's also a reminder that you have not spent enough time on that topic. Like, you sort of start realizing that these are the topics that most people have problems with. And the reason for that is, if you are fluent with the topics that most people have a problem with, you have an upper edge in the final exam. So that helps you recognize the topics that the average student is having a problem with. Solve the doubts, see if you're able to. If you aren't, work on the topic and then try to solve the doubts. But you make sure that you have a sort of a social structure where you have continuous inputs from your friends about what they're doing, and how they're approaching topics, and what issues they're having, what doubts they're facing. And also make sure that you tell them what you're doing. Maybe they'd find some mistake, find some error, tell you that. Like, sometimes I used to study things and I'd tell my friends about them, and they'd remind me that that's not even part of the syllabus. So keep yourself in check. Don't keep to yourself the whole time. Find emotional support from your family and friends. Make sure that you talk with your family throughout your 2 years about, not specifically about the content you're studying, but how you're feeling that day, how your tests are going. Most people find it sort of challenging to talk with their parents about the test scores, but remind yourself that your 2 years are just a no stakes practice. And you're not losing anything by telling your parents. In fact, that's sort of acting as a second conscience, by reminding you, like, if you forget that your scores might have been low, then your parents might remind you that yeah, the scores were low. Maybe we should change the strategy for the next exam. Sometimes if your scores are pretty high but you still feel demotivated to study, then your parents can remind you, you're doing pretty good, why don't you continue the effort? Why let it go at this point? So that's sort of a continuous motivational cycle through your parents. So make sure you keep in regular touch with your parents about your journey. So finally, yeah, so those are my tips for studying for JEE. And that was my journey.